أهلا وسهلا بالجميع.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the audience. And we would like to welcome you in this session that would address how investigative reporters in the MENA region work on security threats, digital security threats. Of course, this session is organized by the global network GIJN as part of the contribution of the network in the ARIJ forum. We would like to thank our colleagues in the ARIJ network for allowing this opportunity for us to be here present in this forum and other conferences. Thank you so much. I would like to introduce myself. I am Majdoulin Hassan. I am the Arabic language editor at the GIJN. This session, I would not take much of your time. We don't have enough time, so let's listen to the speakers. This session is a camera of an intensified course organized at 2 stages, addresses digital threats that involves journalists from across the world. We have another 2 colleagues, Maha and Hala, that I would be introducing to you in a second. Part of this course, where they were part of this course, and we have Luis in this course. We wanted to get all the conclusions or the final outcome to present to you here. So, as not to take much of your time, let me introduce our colleagues. Luis Assardo, he's an expert, he's a digital expert and trainer, and he's an investigative journalist. And also, he's an expert in data. He won a number of awards. He is based in Berlin, and he wrote the chapter on investigations, on campaigns, on commercial campaigns, or a campaign of allegations in the manual of the investigative journalism. He will be here with us today to share with us the conclusions of his expertise and knowledge in this field. We also have our dear colleague Hala Nasreddin, head of the investigations unit at ARIJ. She focuses on financial crimes. She worked on transnational projects like Pegasus and the Bilson files. She has an MA degree in international affairs and a BA in journalism. And last but not least, we have Maha Salahuddin, who's an investigative journalist and a fact checker. She won a number of awards, and she's the founder of the first specialized fact-checking department in data journalism at the Misr Al-Yawm newspaper. She teaches data journalism at the media faculty in Cairo, and she's also a director in the Google News. Let's start with the questions, Luis. I would be speaking in Arabic, and I would be speaking slowly so that the interpreters would be able to explain everything I say into English. During my session with you yesterday, you said that or before we start with anything else, you would like to speak with journalists if they want to do investigations in the digital threats. They have to do 2 things. First, to have the immunity and to then start in this field. What should the journalists do before they start these kinds of investigations? And when they work in, what are the main pillars or aspects that they have to take into account in order to complete their work?
You can speak in English.
No, but I didn't hear the question.
Yeah. Okay. Then I will say it in English. Yesterday in our session, when we had like our kind of discussion about the session, you told me that to be able to investigate digital threats in general, journalists should first learn how to protect themselves, and then they should learn how to properly investigate digital threats in a certain region. So I want to ask you how they can protect themselves, and then how they can also what is the main components that they need to utilize when they want to pursue, investigation in that matter?
Okay, perfect. Yes, first, every journalist needs to be aware of the situation that they are, and first decide if they are receiving an isolated attack or it's a combined attack. It's a systematic attack that include resources, include different kind of threats, and comes from different fronts, I will say, from different vectors, what we call. Usually they are combining legal harassment, online harassment, financial wall or financial harassment in this case, and surveillance, with sometimes even going to physical attacks. So from different sides, usually there is a combination of systematic attacks on journalists, and journalists are not aware of the situation that they are at that moment, so they need first to learn how to identify those factors and then approach them or deal with them in a specific way. Tools, there are many tools, but unfortunately tools are usually done specifically for regions like America, Europe. So regions like this, MENA or Latin America, from where I come from, we are out of the reach of the tools. There is no data, there is no research, there is no funding for research. So there is a lack of not only resources, but focus on specific things. So in this case, journalists need to be very creative and innovative in the ways that they are approaching and dealing with these threats.
Okay. Thank you so much, Luis. Actually, it's a really good foundation to jump to, السؤال التالي. هلا طبعا هو عم بيحكي إنه لازم.
If we switch to the next question, we have to be really well protected, and of course, Hala has her own experiment with Pegasus and the investigations. Pegasus for investigations that revealed the involvement of an Israeli technology company in allowing the governments to spy on journalists and politicians. How were you able to work on this investigation with Daraj? So let's get use. Please share the conclusions.
Thank you a lot, Majduddin. As we have mentioned, and Luis have mentioned, I believe the challenge was main in Pegasus. We as journalists, we were not prepared. We did not know the size of the risk before we reached for these leakages, and looking at the document and work with the other documents that we were aware of that had espionage on 50 entities. The Arab systems, unfortunately, they have bought this system from the Israeli company NSO, and we have discovered that many of the journalists colleagues who were with these lists, and they were defenders of human rights, and this has affected their work, and we were able to see their impact on their daily life also. So I believe, as Louise have mentioned, that we need to be knowing how to use the decoding, looking at the risk, looking about this technology and how is it used, and how could we protect ourselves from that? How would you communicate with our colleagues, because it was a cross-border with the Forbidden Stories and Amnesty International. Well, how there was a large number of journalists. We were about 81 from 17 media outlets. So communication with us was not easy at all. So I believe the first point that we need to train ourselves to spread awareness among each other. We have taken lots of digital security courses. We have worked with many of the experts, and part why I went in the course of the ARIJ, and that we did not know that this is of this size, and we know that from our region. I'm coming from Lebanon, that we had lots of Israeli infiltration, but we did not really know the size and the severity of this problem, and how our life and our journalism life and families and our resources be affected in this spying. So I believe we were able to do an investigation, and we've created an impact, and we had lots of follow-ups, and we have worked on the files with this same context. Thank you a lot, Hala. I noticed the link between the interventions of each colleague. So, Maha, you are an investigative journalist in Egypt, and we know how difficult is it to, when we work to tracking the information, the digital and security threat in every entity, and the investigative journalism is declining. But you have produced materials that were speaking about Facebook sold the data of the users. You have spoken about certain governments, and you try to link the stereotypes about what is happening in other cities and countries compared to what happens in Egypt. Could you tell us about that? Thank you, Najdareen. For me, my relation with the digital threats in a story that I've made in 2018 that was called An Official Divorce, and it was about the demands of the users from the means of social network from the governments, and an investigation as that to do on Egypt only. It would not have been published or passed. What I've read in this idea from the open sources and from the transparency report issued by Facebook and all of that, I was able to document cases from all of the countries on the world, like the United States, Argentina, Italy, and so on. And these are cases that have versus cases in Egypt and in all of our Arab countries. So the reality is not different. The governments already do that, and the companies are there in all of the companies. So to be able to talk about the problems like that in Jordan, in Egypt, and in the Arab world, I have reflected that internationally perspective, and that is an official request. It was based on the open sources and the data analysis. Thank you. Maha, I'll get back to you with another question. Louis.
Because today I read, I read it before, but I just want to refresh my mind. The chapter that you wrote for GIGN's guide on how to investigate digital trolling campaigns. And as you know, as in the region, we had like the Israel-Gaza genocidal war. And we had like this huge propaganda that just occurred out of this war. What is your advice for journalists, investigative journalists in the community, how they can identify the trolling campaign that stemmed out of conflicts and in the war environment, and how to investigate it?
Yeah, perfect. Even if there are such differences in all regions all over the world, there are also some things that are exactly the same. Basically, the propaganda uses exactly the same tools, uses exactly the same methodologies so taking this specifically, the methodology, journalists can create their own methodology according to their specific context in order to start to, and this is, I would say, the most difficult part, start collecting data. In my case, for me, it took 11 years or so to collect data to start identifying behaviors or patterns, because there was no other way to get the data. I mean, the platforms doesn't collect data from countries like mine. So we start collecting data for many years. So of course this is on long terms, but that's the thing that we need to start doing. So first, the methodology, which starts with collecting data, then identifying specific behaviors. And once you identify behaviors, things, even if they evolve on the threat part, they are always be consistent. So it's really easy to identify, for example, behavioral patterns on Russian propaganda, or propaganda coming from Asia, or propaganda coming from US. They exactly uses the same terms, the same methodology, the same tools, even the same resources, even if they change name or whatever. So we collect data, we establish our own methodology, and the third part, which is for me the most important, is to create a community. Mm-hmm. Why? There are some tools that are needed to understand what is happening, and they are really expensive. So there are two things that we can do. Learn to code and learn how to do these kind of things, which will take a lot of time. On the other hand, pay for the tools, and tools are really, really expensive. Mm-hmm. Any newsroom in any of our countries will not be able to to pay it. So what it's possible to do is to create like a community, and they pay for the tool with all the newsrooms involved, and they share the resource. So that's the easiest, I would say, way to do it. So collect data, identify patterns,
and create a community.
and share resources.
Perfect. Now, speaking about the community, رح نتطرق بالحديث عن إنه
So if you want to speak about the creating the framework of the community to exchange experience, you want to speak about the experience of MENA that we were speaking about the Pegasus project. It was cooperative. It was with Forbidden Stories. How much was that of benefit to provide the technology and the knowledge and the available resources? And how could you, could this cooperation with this project make a most impact, even especially when Darij was talking about it? Well, a project like Pegasus that had only one platform that we were working, and especially platforms like ours, that have limited resources, we don't have the potentials, as Louise have mentioned, and the technology and the tools are very expensive. So it is very important to be in a more cooperative manner to provide these tools. Forbidden Stories have also provided us with things, and we have learned how to access decoded things and how to have the safe access so that we will not have any hidden issues when we are working. So this is important. From Pegasus project, we have started to spread awareness for the institutions in Darij about the digital threats and digital security. We are more concerned, all of us as a team of Darij, how to protect ourselves. We had regular checkups for our phones through organizations like SMICS and others. And also we have the awareness, and this is as how we have mentioned, this authorized to work on our project with the ARIJ. That is the investigative collaborations, that is the credit advice that has also an impact in this field, and it was published last year in 2023. The impact is precedent. Well, unfortunately, we are here in an Arab area. The accountability is very difficult to be achieved. So what I've noticed in our life, after we have partners and cooperation that is cross borders, this will cause more impact. Pegasus have placed the Israeli company blacklisted on the U.S. Company, the Intelexa company as well, that have made the espionage application was also imposed sanctions, and also that was in September this year also. And then the issue is also is followed up when you have this momentum with large platforms. That is a massive challenge also. We as journalists coming from institutions like our work in Darij, the resources are way different from the ones when you are working with massive ones like the Washington Post that have a massive team. When you we are working one person or two persons when we are working on these things, they are different, but at the same time, this will let us put a challenge on ourselves on work, and we were able to accomplish and develop, and we have benefited a lot from the experiences of all of the platforms that are working on this. So I believe that the results that are there, they are awareness apart from the sanctions and the companies that have. There's the awareness among the resources of the journalists, and this is integral and important.
Thank you, Hala. As we talk about the resources and the importance of the collaboration, sometimes the cross-border collaboration is not available. So Maha's special experiment is different. When I talked to Maha to organize this session, I was attracted to the idea, to her talk. She said that she's done this investigation by benefiting from this tool that she learned in the course. Could you please share the main tools that you think are beneficiary to the course and that they can be doable given the possibilities or the capacities? One of the main tools we used in the course were the tracking, the website, electronic websites, and the tools of tracing commercials or announcements on the social media. I developed a list of best tools that I always like to utilize, and I hope you would be able to get one. In the course of the digital threats, we have used many tools which enabled us to do too many topics. However, the general situation did not allow us to use them in political or maybe rather dangerous topics for our own safety or security, because they would not be published at the end. But as we have principle, we would never stop working, which we continue to improve ourselves. We'll have the tools and utilize them to investigate things, whether social, art, sports, etc. So this what really made me. Actually, I have a principle. We have work, a lot of work. I like sports. So I didn't want to specialize in sports alone, but it really motivated me to use applications, videos generated through AI to promote certain announcements on the social media platforms. And for example, well-known or famous players like Mohamed Salah or Messi, etc. It was like a sort of a electronic campaign. So I decided to work on these using the tools that I learned to use in the courses on the digital threats. We can never stop learning or working, but we need to use or to benefit from all these things that we learned about, even if in the simplest manner. Thank you, Maha. Of course, we're running out of time, but we would open the floor for Q&As. We would start with our colleagues online. Abdulrahman, I hope I'm reading his name correctly. Abdulrahman Zabib. Question is to either Hala or Maha. All the constitutions and laws of the Arab world stipulate the criminalization of espionage against the communication tools. Why can't we demand the enforcement of legal versions to mitigate the threats or the attacks on the privacy of journalists across the world? Probably Luis, because he lives in similar situations in Latin America. But who would wish to answer this question? Regarding his comment, yeah, we hope so. This is our wish to mitigate these threats. There's a lot of pressure on the work of the journalists. We exert pressure in order to stop or to end such violations against human rights defenders and journalists, and in order to demand or require certain control over these trafficking and spying against the journalists. There are many programs to combat terrorism, but what we see on the ground in our investigations, these are used against the journalists and to oppress them and to oppress the freedom of expression, the freedom of press. So I think this is excellent. However, the judiciary in our countries, or at least in Lebanon, is absent, is disabled to a large extent. So we are not being able to access the judiciary. And in addition to the companies, the Alexa company in Europe or in the EU, Amnesty said that this was a complete failure by the EU states because they're not controlling the trafficking against these trafficking of these programs. Thank you, Hala. There are always alternatives or substitutes for prosecution, judicial prosecution, or maybe to criminalize these threats, or maybe other ways. See, let's take another question, because if there are no questions here in the audience, we can take another one from our colleagues online. Hello, Zainab Ismail from SMEX. I have two questions, if time allows. The first one is directed to Maha. What are the procedures or measures? Have you been able to communicate with specialized associations to provide trainings on digital safety, or have you done developed any plans for the journalists to carry out these sorts of investigative reports, avoiding any risks? The other question is to Hala. I know that investigative journalism is a huge system. When you did this work, was it accompanied to certain advocacy efforts and demanding the officials, including governments, to control the utilization of such softwares or programs? If they are not the ones who are buying them, of course, and using them against human rights defenders and journalists. Thank you. Please, go ahead. We have been providing training all the time with my team, and we are always open to get or to take trainings, whether internally or inside the institution or outside or abroad, even attending workshops about digital security or anything related. Our institution is very much open. We have conducted more than one training about digital security, but at the end of the day, we are at a certain point. We cannot work or use everything. Hala? First of all, thank you for your question, and my salute to SMICS. I know they do a lot of work. As investigative journalists, our objective is to reveal things. We had a big base of data, especially regarding the region and the journalists and the Arab journalists who were affected a lot by this, and of course, the activists. So our efforts are to expose, to be able to do documentation and to communicate this. And of course, at the end of the day, our goal is to have impact. We were wishing to have an organization, advocacy, organizations that would take the conclusions of our investigations and to exert pressure in this, or maybe to, I don't know if this answered your question.
So is there any question before we close the session online? There's a question for Louise. Can you hear the translation? So in the investigations, when the journalists investigate digital threats and the campaigns that are inciting and prove certain results, usually the journalist is at risk of revenge, especially if he was investigating institutions that are of influence. How could a journalist handle that, and how could he mitigate these repercussions?
Yes, perfect. The key factor, and is really attached with what they are doing in digital security, is to have a personal protection plan ahead. If you know that you are going to release a report or an investigation that involves corruption in government or really powerful organization, a criminal organization, you need to plan ahead. You have to know how they will attack you. This requires a specific skill and is basically how to profile the attacker or the possible attacker. Sometimes we will know exactly who is, but we can profile the attacker, and this means we know the intentions, we know the skill level, what kind of resources they can use. So when we know that, is the same as a disaster. We cannot avoid them, but we can reduce the impact of the disaster when they come. So we know that they are using this specific context, they are using this information, they are using these kind of tools to do discredit, or they are using specific methodologies.
طبعا احنا في آخر دقيقة.
Well, we are in the last minute. I can thank the speakers dearly, Louise and Hella and Maha, for their interventions. Well, of course, I can say that the time have not saved us, but each one of them have a lot to present, to tell us about this topic. Well, I have read investigations of the two female colleagues, in addition to Louise's investigations and his contribution and the guidance of the cyber crime attacks that was included in the open resources in the network. They are rich, and I encourage you all to look at it. Well, we will provide you the resources. They will be sent to our colleagues in ARIJ, and they will be shared later on also on the means of social media that are regarding the network. Thank you, ARIJ. Thank you, the attendees. God bless your efforts.